Perfect, and we're live. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today. For anyone who doesn't know, this is Lauren Ellis. This is the younger sister, also known as Three Bros. She's been what? You're turning 21, coming up in June. Is that right? Or
That's right.
oh man, you're getting old. That just puts in perspective how old I guess I actually am. Um, but yeah, obviously growing up being the little sister, you got the nickname Three Bros just because you got three older brothers, and weren't the nicest humans probably in the world to you growing up, and beat you up a little bit, but gave you some good character and became the person that you were meant to be. So thank you again for coming on.
Of course.
Perfect. Well, I like to start off with a fun question just to kind of get the ball rolling. What is one of your favorite memories of us growing up together? Is there any memory that just kind of pops off the top of your head where you're like, oh, that was a good time?
Honestly, this is, like, the first thing that comes to my head is when you and Brennan would play football, and you would always come to, like, the elementary schools and, like,
Mm,
do your little walkthrough or whatever, and you guys would always walk in the room, and I would, like at home, like, low-key, we never talk to each other, like, I would always be fighting with you guys or, like, blaming you for something to mom, but the second you guys walked in that room, I was just the happiest thing ever. I'd jump on you guys and be like, "Oh my god, this is my brother."
a
No,
proud
at
little
home,
sister.
I probably got thrown across the room a few times.
I do remember that. I think you were at maybe Fairview or something like that, and I must have been a senior, but yeah, that just shows the age difference there where, yeah, I was coming in for homecoming and you were still in elementary school. But I do
Yeah.
remember it because, yeah, I was like, "That's my big brother," and then obviously Brendan got to do it and Landon got to do it too, so no, that's a cool memory. I think that's a good one, we've got to talk about now that we've gotten older and we have, go through life and matured a little bit, that you and me our relationship has kind of changed a lot throughout the years. Growing up, I was always more focused kind of internally, and I've always kind of been a selfish person. So I've spent a lot of time focusing on like Landon and you. Obviously, Brendan we went to college together, and we, had lots of football and different things like that we bonded over. So it's been really great to bond more over the last couple of years and get to know you a lot better. So I figured we want to get you on the podcast so we can talk even more, even though we've had lots of good conversations in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I know you have some differentiated opinions, and you've mentioned before that you want to say a couple things. So figured I'd give you the platform to do so. So I think that's awesome. But
Mhm.
well, thank you for sharing that. But let's move on to the next question. So what made you interested in kinda going into this career of dealing with people's teeth? When I think about it, I'm like, "That's kinda gross." I don't know how you even think about that. Obviously, Ted being our grandpa and, being a dentist his whole life, that probably could have made an influence, but what kinda was the big influence for you?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is I had literally no idea what I wanted to do at all. I think growing up with Jason, our dad was a pharmacist, and then Landon went into pharmacy, I was like, "Oh god, I have no idea, so I'll just do that." And that's what I told everybody. I was like, "I'm gonna be a pharmacist. I'm gonna go to SSU," but I had no idea what I wanted to do until, like, it was literally, I think, like, March of senior year, and I was forced to go do shadow hours for, like, school, and then I went into the clinic, and I was like, "Oh, dentist. I'm gonna be a dentist," because I was always told I was, like, super smart, whatever, and all that, and then I was like I watched the dentist. I had so many hours watching dentists, like, I would just sit in there for, like, an hour a day, probably a couple times a week, and then the more I watched, I was just like, "Oh, this is fun," but then I saw her pull a tooth, and I was like, "Yeah, it's just not. I don't think I could do that."
Yeah.
And then I went and watched the hygienist work, and I was like, "I love this." Like, it was a little routine, a little not. They were very organized, they had everything they did just kinda looked, like, very smooth, and I was like, "This I like." I like doing a little bit of routine, but it varies based off patient by patient. And I also knew that I mean, mom was a huge help, but, like, she helped me schedule out if I wanted to go play tennis for a year, like, she can help me transfer into that, and I was like, "I think I can do this. I'll be done with school in 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 years." Now 3, thank goodness.
Yep.
But I was like, "I can be done, I can make a good career, good money, and I can always go back to be more if I wanted to go to dental school later." So I was like, "Why not just start little?"
Yeah, I think that it's very interesting that, Landon obviously is gonna become a pharmacist, but both you and Brennan both had, "Well, I'll just follow dad and be a pharmacist." I don't think I ever once had that idea in my head. I think I took pharmacology once in high school just to, like, get a medical something just because I had to cross it off or something like that, and I don't even think
Mhm.
it lasted 2 weeks before I was like, "This is stupid. I don't like this at all." And never once did it cross my mind to go in the medical field, but obviously, you and Brendan aren't technically medical by any means, but it's like the health and wellness and everything like that. So it's cool. It's really interesting to see. Obviously, it makes a whole lot of sense when our mother is an ER nurse and then dad's obviously a pharmacist to stem down that way and be in that field. But somebody's got to be the black sheep in the family. So I guess I'll stick to what I do, and you guys will be done soon too. But no, I think that's awesome, especially since you got a jump start on everything, and like you said, you get to be done in 3 years. And I know Darian, when she got done in 3 years with nursing school, that was, like, one of the best things in the world for her because she immediately jumped into the workforce, and so, when she started looking for jobs after a year and a half to 2 years, people were looking for the experience. It's really hard off the gate when you have no experience, even though you have a nice fancy degree with even if it's from a prestigious school, a lot of people are still looking for that experience. They need somebody with boots on ground. So the faster you actually get to go into those jobs and get to go into the workforce, more doors will open up for you. So I think that's great.
Mhm.
You've been on a great path. So I know obviously you'll be the only Ellis not to go to SDSU, which I think hurts mom and dad a little bit, but it'll be all right. I went to USD. I mean, went to USD. I did my 6 months there, so you
What'd you
know
think of it? Did you like it? I don't
I
remember that whole
honestly
lot.
really liked the campus a lot. And like I did spend a lot of time at the library and different courses like that. It's a nice campus. I just always felt that yeah, when it was driving from Sioux City all the way to Vermilion, there's nothing in between, and that's where I was living at the time. And then in Vermilion, I mean, there's like a Taco Bell or maybe it's a Taco John's and something else, but there's nothing there. I mean, there's just not a lot going on. So I think that was my biggest dilemma with it was I was like, there's just not much going on here.
No, yeah. I will say I love the school. I like okay, I won't say I love the school. I love my program and I
Mhm.
love the people in my program. I love the teachers, they really care. But anything outside of my one building that I sit in all day, I like I just sit in my dorm or I go for a walk 'cause it's pretty, but I've never been in like more than one under two other buildings.
Yeah, that's probably fair, especially when your program is so focused. You don't really have to like I was still in my gen ed period, so yeah, I was going to all kinds of different English, education, history, like all the different buildings. So, but no, that's awesome. Do you get to spend a lot of time in Sioux City still since you're going back to see Caden, or does Caden come to you a lot of the times?
First semester, it was 100% Caden had to come to me because it was something so new, and I was studying literally, like, I went from playing tennis and doing lifts and do all that, I had all
Mm,
this time to literally studying from 8 AM to 10 PM every day, just because they throw everything at you at once because they need you to know it in 1 semester.
mm.
So, no, yeah, he had to come to me for the most of it, and then when he got in season, I would go there a little more. But this semester, I'd say I'm probably in Sioux City 2, 3 days a week. I play tennis down there sometimes.
Yeah.
I can go so much more this semester.
Do they still call it Sewer City like they used to when I was going to
Yeah,
college there?
yeah.
Yeah, good old Sioux City. I did enjoy my time there. I can't lie. It's like the first major city outside of Spencer.
Mhm.
Obviously you got like Mankato that you could go up north to. Sioux Falls is about 2 hours, but Sioux City was always right there. So it always made sense. So I do think that's cool that you and me both kind of had our experiences through Sioux City. Obviously you going to Morningside over Briarcliff, but I don't blame you whatsoever. Briarcliff is what it is. I don't think there's been one person who's ever went to Briarcliff that doesn't go, "Well, Morningside's pretty cool too," So,
Yeah.
but I digress. So, but let's say when you're looking into the future, what kind of most excites you about, the upcoming experiences that you're about to go into, knowing that you only have about a year left of school and then you're about to start your adult life? What do you think kind of sticks out to you as most exciting?
I think the most exciting is, like, kinda as you said, I'm gonna be done. I'm graduating the same month that Landon is, and
Mm,
it's like I'm gonna be 21 graduating, which in, like, hygienists are so, like, in need right now that realistically, I could probably go wherever I want, and that's just really exciting for me is that I get a pick. I don't really have any, like, external, like, pressing factors, like, I don't need to stay in Spencer, but I could. I honestly, me and Caden have talked a lot about, like, moving out to what's it called? Like, Idaho area, like Utah, that sort of thing. Just 'cause I mean, we visited there, but I don't wanna live I'm young, I'm literally 21, so I could live out there for, like, 3, 4 years and then move back if I really wanted to.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most exciting, it's just I have all this opportunity and I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to stick in one place.
The world's at your fingertips right now. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I know that was kind of that giddy feeling for me too when I finally got the opportunity to go to the West Coast was like it just felt like everything was finally starting the way it was supposed to. You know, it's a grind, going through obviously all of high school and then you get to college and you even if you only have 3 years, I mean, studying because everybody talks about it. As soon as you get done with your career, then you can start the workforce. Then you can start, you have adult money and then you can do fun things and you can go on these trips and do all these things. So I think you got the world at your hands. And I think, yeah, it's absolutely exciting to explore those new opportunities. And I've talked about it a lot on the podcast in the sense of anyone that's your age or even around that age, do exactly what you said, explore a little bit. Because at the end of the day, even if it's, not where you want to end up, where you just, enjoyed your time, but you want to come back, you can come right back. Just like me and Darian did. We spent 3 or 4 years out in Oregon, decided to have a family, and then we moved back. Who knows what our future is going to hold, but it's just that ability to go back and forth. There's opportunities out there. So I think you're absolutely right. The worst thing that you can do is just be too scared to take that risk, too scared to take the jump, and then not try anything new and just continue with the daily routine. But not to say that you have to go all the way out west to Idaho or anything crazy. Maybe it's even just going to Sioux Falls and trying it out for a little bit or anything else like that just to kind of get your feet wet in the world experience. But with your with your degree, and like you said, there's a high demand. Is there like a specific area of the country that's in high demand, or is it just basically anywhere you go, there's going to be job opportunities for you?
I think right now it's gonna be anywhere I kinda go. Obviously, I think more people are gonna move out to those nicer areas, so they probably won't need them as much. But,
Yeah.
like, for example, like, I was visiting Caden's hometown in, like, Nebraska, and I got an email saying there was, like, 20 areas around his hometown that needed hygienists, one of them
Mm,
being his small hometown that had, like, I don't know, probably the same s a little smaller than Spencer. So it's like, yeah, I really think I could go about anywhere with it.
that's awesome. Yeah, I think that was Darian's favorite thing when she first got in nursing is the travel nursing opportunities. And so when you have a job that's that lucrative in the sense that you can find opportunities anywhere, it's exciting. But I don't know, maybe it's not the best thing because sometimes it's nice to have like, okay, you got 5 places you can go to. All right, let's explore them and then check out all 5 where now you can just go, "Well, I got the whole United States. Maybe we got to check it all or where do you start, that can be probably
Mhm.
a little overwhelming, a little anxious too, but as long as you put your foot forward and go in the right direction, sure you'll get it all. I know Darian, that's one thing that we've been talking about a lot about is that she's about to get her obviously midwife degree. She's got a couple of years to go, but midwife nursing is very selective in the sense of it's not offered in every state, and there's a lot of states that only have a couple. Like for instance, here in Missouri, I think there's only 6 or 7 right now, and so it would be pretty hard for her to get a job where we currently live if they don't have more openings and opportunities. So, um, we'll see where life takes us, but that's the beauty of life, right? You just wake up and every day it presents itself with new opportunities, and you get to decide whether you want to move on them or not. So I think that's awesome. I'm very excited for you, and I'm very excited to see kind of what life brings you in the next coming parts because I know this is can be one of the most exciting times. You and Lyndon both, like you said, about to graduate and take on the world. So it'll be great to see where you guys both go and see if there's anything we can do to help you guys establish yourselves and keep going from there. So, um, but moving on from there. So more of a personal question. Now we've kinda got some of the fun questions out of the way, we gotta dive a little bit deeper, see, what Lauren really feels. So, what emotion do you find hardest to understand about yourself, would you say?
Honestly, like, if anything, I'd just say, like, this is kinda like I don't wanna say surface level, but it's just, like, a word that comes to mind, just, like, sadness. Like, I
Mm,
think growing up, I was always a happy kid, and then, like, growing up having brothers, like, that's not really an emotion I could, like, almost express, like, almost having a mom that was like she never really showed it, dad never really showed it, and I never really saw it from you guys because I think you might have, like, hid it a little bit, so, like, when sad stuff happens, it's always been, like, a hard thing for me to process because 'cause I'm like, I don't know, I've never dealt with this before. So even in college, like moving from school, I went from one school, made it home, switched to schools, and then had to just restart all over. It was very hard on me. And I think trying to deal with that, I had no idea how to deal with that because I'd never been alone like that. I'd never been in my own space, no one from hometown or anything. So I think it's definitely an emotion that's definitely hard to process. It's something that I've worked on a lot, but it's still in the ongoing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know why. Maybe it's yeah, because we just didn't see any of our parents. You know, mom and dad really never showed a ton of emotion other than anger, you could say. But no, I'm just playing. No, they did good with hiding their emotions, and I think we all do that. I think it is really hard for any of us Ellises to kind of, if you have a partner, for us to kind of be divulged and figure out what's going on. I know Darian always used to say that was, and still to this day, you know, I'll go stone cold face, and she's just like, "You gotta talk to me. Like, what's going on in your head?" Because she knows something's wrong, but she just can't figure out what it is because I just don't talk about it, you know? So, I think you're absolutely right, and especially sadness is definitely one of the tricky ones, and it's definitely something that can just consume you too if you let it. And not if you don't talk about it or you don't address it properly, it's something that can just absolutely devour you. You know, I talk a lot about it with my back, and you know, I didn't know how to deal with that kind of sadness of transitioning from an athlete my entire life to just a normal Joe who can't really do much. I decided rather than to talk about it or even mention it to anybody, I just bottled it up for almost a year, and then finally it was like it just exploded out of me where I was just so overwhelmed and almost borderline depressed because yeah, I just wouldn't talk about it and I wouldn't address it, and so I think you're doing the right steps. Acknowledge it for what it is. Everybody has sadness in their life. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Acknowledge it for what it is, and then find a way to either self-talk through it or find people to talk about it with too. Because, like you said, going to different schools and different colleges and meeting new people and doing all those things is something that people do on a daily basis. So obviously, other people are feeling the same emotions that you are, and just finding a way to kind of cope with them. But sadness is kind of a fickle bitch, but I'm guessing, have you made some new friends and some new people at SCSU or not SCSU, USD?
Yeah, I definitely have. I will say the first semester sucked because I knew nobody. Everyone in my class had been there for 2 years, so they all knew each other. They're all best friends. They had their little
Mm,
like cliquey little groups. And I
yeah,
remember I was like, I know nobody here. And I was like, I'm a pretty social person when I want to be, but like when I was just sitting there quiet, I was like, this really sucks. I was like, I know nobody here. But no, yeah, definitely. I just kind of learned to reach out and just be outgoing. I had to be myself. And then when I started being myself, I noticed I was getting invited places more. I was like getting talked to more. People like I got leadership positions in my class because I was actually talking and you know, I like wanted to get to know people. So yeah,
that's
took a minute,
awesome.
but we get there.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience with USD, and it wasn't anything to do with the school. It was just like you said. It was I had a group of football buddies that I was, you know, clicked up with, as they say, for 2 years, and then I'd go to a new school, and I'm, you know, almost a junior at that point, and just jumping into the middle of it, and everybody's already got their friendships and their things going on, and so it's tough. It's definitely difficult, especially I think that was when I felt the most alone for a long time. Is that I just didn't have any good friends there. Obviously, all my football buddies were still doing football, and so I just had me, myself, and I in a little house, and that's where I got, I think, 19 out of 42 for attendance. 19 times out of 42 classes. Just it didn't end very well for me with a lot of those things. So, and it's so bad that I joined the military. That's how fun USD was for me. So, nah, that wasn't it. I always wanted to do that, but it definitely drove me a little bit that way. So, but that's
That's
awesome.
kinda crazy. We're having, like, the same experiences here. It's like we both
Honestly.
went to, like, a Sioux City school for, like, a year,
Mhm.
played a sport, transferred, and you're like, "Oh, this kinda sucks." 'Cause that's how
Yeah,
I was. I mean, all my best friends were tennis players, and, like, I knew every single person on, like, Morningside's or no, I shouldn't say every person. I knew, like, half the people on Morningside's campus because it was smaller. I went to
yeah,
a big school, was a junior, and I literally knew nobody, and I was like, "This is horrible."
yeah. It's weird. Life's a weird game, but, um, I know obviously Jesse went to USD too, so we've got a little
Mhm.
coyote blood in us, you know, nothing too crazy, but no, that's awesome. Let's see, what do you think your younger self would be most surprised to learn about who you are today, would you say?
I think most surprised I mean, probably dental hygienist, to be honest.
Yeah,
But another part of that, I think, is I'm trying to think. I think one thing I'd be like really shocked with is how like deep I've gotten with my faith. We've talked about this a lot, but I think when I was younger, I was so afraid of going to church and I just hated it. I hated being forced to do it. I hated the surrounding of it. and I hated like, just the thought of, like, my younger self looking up and being like, "Oh, you really love that?" It's like, oh, like, I think back then I'd be like, "That's weird." I mean, surface level, another thing I think would be super different is the fact that we're girls' clothes now because I grew up with you
Mm.
guys, and you guys gave me all your boy shorts and your
Yep.
oversized T-shirts. So, yeah, that's another thing.
I will say that was one of the things where it was coming back. At some point, you went from, yes, a little tomboy to you were in makeup in girls' clothes, and I was like, "The fuck happened to my sister? Where'd she go? What'd you do to her?" But mom's like, she's a girl, everybody's got it," and I was like, "I know, I'm just playing," but still, it was a big transition where, yeah, you were always wearing our hand-me-downs or just something that we had worn in the past, and then it was, "Alright, well, now we gotta start to, dress to impress and do all the high school things," I suppose, probably, so, but no, I think you're right on the money too with the faith thing where I'm sure at your age, being string along, me and Brendan have talked about it and, obviously going to church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and it just sometimes did feel like a chore. It felt like, we want to sleep in on Sundays or, "Oh, we got football today, Dad. Can't we just stay and watch football?" It's like, "No, we gotta go to church and then we gotta go to grandma's," or whatever the case else we were doing the rest of that day. And so, yeah, sometimes it definitely felt like a chore, and it definitely can drive people away from that aspect of things. Um, Unf it wasn't that for me, the aspect of, feeling like a chore, but, we'll talk more about the whole religious stuff here in a second, so
Mm.
we won't jump into it too quick, but, well, kind of on a similar note, what is, like, one of the most painful truths that you've had to kind of accept about yourself growing up now and kind of going into this new role of being an adult? What's something that you look back on and you're like, "Man, that wasn't what I thought it was?"
I will say, even, like, every day I kind of have to acknowledge this, especially when I'm, like, home or I'm, like, by myself at USD, is that I had to accept that I hate being alone, and I never would have, like, even thought about it like that before. It's not even, like I'm not talking relationships, I'm not talking, like, being around people, or well, I guess kinda. It's just, like, I don't like sitting in my room by myself, I don't like being bored, and I think that was the hardest thing for me to accept is, like, this is just how I am, and I need to learn how to deal with it because I was always wondering, I was like, "Why do I get so sad when I'm by myself? Why do I always feel like I have to be impressing people or be around people to be happy?" And then I kinda realized, I'm like, "This isn't anybody else making you happy, it's just I think I surrounded myself so much as a kid with other people, and I hated being alone, that it's just something that was imprinted, and then I got to college, and I spent all that time alone, and I think that's kinda when it hit. I'm like, "Oh, this is, like, not about me at all," or, like, "This isn't about other people at all, it's about me."
Yeah. That's something that I also share is that, growing up, it's not only it's the siblings factor, but I think it's also like the sports mentality as well. And then just friends, I've never been alone and I'm the same way. It took a long time where it was like when you're finally at like truthfully alone, like no one's in the house and you're just by yourself and then it's just you and this thing up here. That's all it is. You can because I think a lot of times you can distract yourself with so many things, whether it's, good times and you're laughing all the time with your friends, your family, all these things. That doesn't mean that you're not facing something else in your own head, that you're not upset about something or sad about something, but it's so easy with life to just put those to the side and not and be distracted from everything else. And so it's a skill. It's definitely a skill that you have to learn, and it's really hard, I think, being an adult is that when you get more time to be alone, when you start to move away from your, friends growing up, you move away from your family and then all these other things as you're trying to do your own endeavors, to kind of be in those situations and be like, "Oh shit, I don't like this. This is very uncomfortable." And I tell Darian that all the time because, I've always whether it was basic football, buddies at home, family, I hate being alone. I hate it. It's something that I've learned in Oregon to do much better with, whether it's through meditation or different things like that, because I think it's extremely important to have alone time though. I think that's where you actually can process the things that you need to and process your own thoughts and be in your own head because you can't do that with people around, you know? Even if you're able to process some little things, you've got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and have those really in-depth conversations. And the only way to do that is to be alone. So, I think it's absolutely right, and I think that's also kudos to you to acknowledge something like that because it took me a long time to kind of acknowledge that. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce our new sponsorship with West River Whiskey Company. West River Whiskey Company started as a dream in the summer of 2020. While working with Indian Motorcycle, the owner, Joel, made great friends with some key executives at Jack Daniels. They successfully opened their business in April of 2021. They started their journey off with Jack Daniels products, and after just 6 months into operations, they were approached by a business partner, Gordon Oman of Black Fork Farms Distilling. Over the last several years, they have built the West River and Black Fork brands, introducing the world to South Dakota bourbon. Starting with just a handful of bourbon styles, they now proudly pour and sell over 15 different bourbon products, as well as Black Fork's top vodkas and gins. In 2024, West River was named Deadwood Business of the Year by a group of their peers. They strive to give back to the community that has given them so much, as both Joel and Don proudly serve on the Deadwood Fire Department. You can find their website link in my bio, where you can get direct access to their merchandise. As always, thank you for your support and enjoy the rest of the podcast. It probably wasn't until I was in my late 20s to actually acknowledge that I hate being alone and that I don't like the inner demons that talk into my head when nobody else is around. So, um, distractions. And I think, honestly, when I made that jump was when I deleted social media the first time around. I found myself so many times going to social media, going to the TikToks, the Instagrams, anything like that, when I started to be alone and didn't have people around, just to flush my brain and just not think about things. And then it was like as soon as I deleted that and didn't have that little crutch, it was like, oh shit, I've got a lot of things to talk about in my head. I've got a lot of things that I haven't quite solved out myself. And to your point, no one else is going to come figure it out for you. So it's you either can continue to push those out, or you can sit down and have that conversation with yourself. So I think that's really cool. Um, do you think that when finding more about yourself, what do you think? Is there anything else that you kind of struggle with other than being alone? Is there anything else that like happens in your daily life that you're like checking yourself on?
I mean, the only thing I can, like, think of off the top of my dome is, like, I hate not being, like, let's say, like, tests, for example. If I don't care if I'm getting a 98, I'm kinda like mom. If I'm getting one wrong, I wanna know why. And I think I've just always held myself to that, and it's so annoying
Yeah.
because it's like, I can get a 94 on a midterm, which I did last week. I got, like, a 95 or something, and I was like, "What the hell? What'd I get wrong?" And, like, I can look at that, and I could be like, "Oh my gosh, I got a 95. Let's go to that's an A." But for me, it's like, I look at it, and I'm like, I'm stupid. Like, what'd I get wrong? And I hate that about myself because it's so hard and holding yourself to such a high expectation. I could get 100 and I'd be like, well, that's fine. Like, it must have been easy. That was the hardest. I think that's so hard for me is because I hate that.
That's the Sarah in you. That sounds just like her. That sounds like mama. No, that's I mean, that's a good realization too, because when you have a certain level, obviously you're a very smart, intelligent woman, and when you're at that level, it is hard to, to not micromanage yourself and not, because how else are you gonna push yourself? Because you could be like, "Oh, I got a 92." Well, that's good enough, you're not making yourself any better. So it's a good trait to have, but it also could cause you a ton more stress and a lot more anxiety and a lot of the things that go with that. It's kind of that glass half full versus glass half empty kind of view, right? And I used to be that way a lot where it was just I was so hard on myself for my thing, my little ick that I had with myself was that I wasn't doing enough. Every day it was like I just didn't do enough. I could literally go and do like 80 different things that day, and then it'd be 8 o'clock at night, and I'd be like, "Okay, well, what else can I cram in before I go to bed tonight?" You know what I'm saying? And me and Brendan had a conversation about that because he's the same way, and it's more of that's the glass half empty view where it's like it's never enough. You could still fill up half that water left, right? Whereas now I've tried to train my brain into it's glass half full, where it's like, oh, I still have enough water left. I still have enough opportunities. I don't gotta rush things. I don't gotta, over exaggerate or stress things out with those kinds of things. So it's taken a long time to get to that view, I'll tell you what though. But it's just more of those self-reflections, self-conversations, and trying to be better. I think that's all you can do, right? Is just try and be better every single day, whether
Mhm.
whatever facet that is in your life, just take little bits at a time and try and be better. So, I think that's awesome. Think you're growing up too fast, Tommy Lou. I think you're growing up just too fast, but
Just
I'll
annoying.
come to terms with it one day, I promise.
Well, it doesn't help that, like, when you left for college, I was, what, 11 or something?
Yeah.
So, you probably still Probably see that little girl following you up the stairs in her basketball shorts, and it's like, "Oh, that's weird."
I still see Freya as this little baby that I took home from the hospital the other day, and she's running around giving me sass and giving me tood, you know? It's just one of those things where you see people in a certain way, and you just that's just the way you see them, and it's tough. It's tough when you get old. It's tough, but a good thing. Fuck, I'm almost 30. Can you believe that shit? I'm old. I remember, let's see. I can remember when dad was like 33 because I would have been like 7 or 8 at the time. And I just was like, man, that guy's old. That's just old dad. And I'm like, fuck, that's gonna be me very soon. So I was like, sheesh. So, anyways, I won't talk about that too much. Sorry, pops. I don't want to put you on blast when you're not even here to defend yourself. Um, but yeah, let's gear the conversation now towards kind of the bigger, broader questions of life and kind of talk about faith because I know that's something that you've been very avid about over the last couple of years, and it's been great to have conversations with you. But it's always good to have more. So, when you think about faith and spirituality or like a higher power, where do you personally stand on the idea of God? Would you say?
I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but I have over the past few years, I think it's just kind of been slow little ticks, and I always kind of knew about like I don't want to say Christianity because I don't really believe in like certain religions. I think religion's dumb. Like separating a big picture that should be just one ideal. Instead, they split it up into little chops and then just go against each other. I hate that.
Yeah,
But I like to say just like followers of Christ because it's different for me. But for me, it's like I've always kinda known there was a God, but I didn't understand why. I prayed about it, I didn't understand it, and then one day it just kinda clicked when I heard about Jesus, and I was like, "Wait, that all makes sense." And then I started reading my Bible, and I just noticed more and more as I read, I was like, "This makes sense." And so, yeah, that is definitely where I stand right or I don't wanna say right now, that's dumb. That's where I stand on that.
yeah. Um, I had a podcast with Chen Hao earlier this week, and he kind of mentioned it like the idea of philosophy and just kind of how each religion kind of gives you the morals and beliefs that you kind of have in your system. And so I always found that with Christianity, it has a good moral premise, right? Where it has good values and good virtues. And me and him were kind of on the same page. It's that final adding factor of Jesus, the actual person. He came back, died for your sins, reincarnated, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of what gave it the religion that it is today. What kind of pushes you towards that rather than stopping and saying, "Hey, I believe in a God. I believe in, all these good morals and good things and good teachings." What makes you take that step and say, "I believe that Jesus came and died on the cross for our sins"? What's your reasoning behind it?
I mean, realistically, I could go on about like all the scientifical facts of like Jesus literally being on Earth because he was a real human. He was someone that was here, and
Mhm.
science can prove that. But I mean, beyond that, it's just like the feeling of knowing a God, knowing you have like the Lord in heaven, but then it's like you go deeper, and then as soon as you accept Jesus into your heart, it's like I don't know to describe that something just clicks. It's something in your heart just changes. I've never experienced having more love for people around me. I've never experienced more joy in my life. And I can't even blame that on like, oh, I just grew up because it's not. I faced literally the worst moments of my life where I was so, I hate using the word depressed because I think it just brings down the room. But I was so sad, and then I had nothing. I felt like I had nothing. But then at the same time, I was happy, and because I had that hope in me from Christ. And I think it's just like the more I read my Bible, I'm like, there is not one contradiction in the Bible that proves. And then it's like the more I read, I'm like, this is just all lighting up. And so I think that's kind of what takes me past, there's just my God above. And it took me a while because I kind of fell into like the whole, I know nowadays, like a lot of kids my age are like Christian believers, but they don't look past just the, oh, Jesus died for my sins. And that's kind of what I believed in. I was like, but I don't need to change for it because he died for it. And then I kind of came to a point of, no, he didn't just die for it. He died for me to change. He died so that I didn't have to be crucified and stuff like that. All that.
I
So
think
yeah.
that's a good view to have too, because that's another thing that we talk about a lot is that you have that it's the surface level, like you just mentioned. It's, "Oh, he died for my sins, so I'm off the hook, thank you, Jesus, I'm gonna go do whatever I wanna do." And it's just like, that's like you said, that wasn't the point. The point of the story is that he made the ultimate sacrifice so that you could learn from it, and then that you can learn from yourself and have those, you know, self-reflecting moments and just moments with yourself and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm not on the right path. I'm sinning. Let's go back to the right path and the path that needs to be followed." So, yeah, I always just bring it up because it's so interesting. Obviously, we've talked about the Old Testament versus the New Testament. Old Testament, obviously, with Christianity and Judaism, it's the same thing. They believe in the same God and everything. It's just that you make that Y intersection, and one goes, "Well, there was the Son of God," and the other one's like, that Jesus was. I don't think anybody can deny that Jesus was a person. He was a man and a historical figure. It's just taking that leap of saying, "Hey, he was the son and he came back, he was resurrected," so on and so forth. So, and I completely understand that aspect too, because if you're like a science-based person and somebody who truly believes in science, then it's like, obviously that crosses a red flag right away, because we've don't have any other historical accounts of anyone ever coming back to life after death, or anybody that has that ability or that power. But in Christianity is probably, to your advantage, where you're like, "Well, that's my point, is that no one else has ever been able to do it, so that's why he is, the true one." And so, but, like we always say, we'll never truthfully know. There's a lot of, people that were there at the time, and a lot of people that got to talk about it and see all the events transpire, and those are the people who wrote the history books. So those are the only people that ever truly know the truth. Now, how do we get to where we are today? Like you said, I don't even know how many denominations are in Christianity alone, but everybody's got a different twist on it, right? Everybody has a different way to practice and do their life and do different things like that. But I always say, you should be able to practice whatever you want. Practice whatever, makes you a better person. And I think that the only time that it kind of draws a line with me is that if you're just being ignorant and you're not becoming a better person, and you're using it as a shield and saying, "Well, I believe in Jesus, but I'm gonna go be a piece of shit over here." It's like, no, no, no. That's just not how things work. That's not how things transpire. So, have you ever had like an experience, a very spiritual experience that kind of led you to go down a deeper path of your belief, or has it always just been kind of you finding the little crumbs and just kind of starting to build like snowball effect towards your beliefs?
I will say that, like, some people don't wanna hear this, and, like, a lot of people probably won't believe the things I say about it because they're like, "Oh, she's just full of it, whatever." And I can't blame them because I would have thought the same stuff if I would have heard people say this, and even when I was beginning my walk with Christ, I was like, "Yeah, that's just, like, AI, or it's just, like, they're full of it because they just want" you never know what it's from.
Yeah.
And I think it didn't take until I was, like, really at a high point with Christ, and I was like, "This is, like, the best thing that's ever happened," is when I started, like, really experiencing stuff that I was like, "Oh, this is real." Like, I'll say, for example, I think the biggest like, it makes me shake just thinking about it. Like, one of the biggest moments for me was I was sitting alone in my room, and I have had dreams on and off about like spiritual stuff, like demons and like angels. And that's just, I think that only started when I really started getting close with Christ. And people can say, "Oh, it's just because you read more." I don't think so because I used to read a lot, and then when I started reading less, it started happening.
Mm.
But one of the biggest moments for me, I think, was I was kinda just sitting alone in my room, and I was with my boyfriend at the time, or boyfriend, Caden, and he can attest to this because he felt it too. But we were talking, and I don't know what exactly we were talking about, but then I remember it was dark, and I looked over, and I could see the most just it literally looked like a demon. It looked in a demon in my room, and I remember I just went full panic attack. I turned on all the lights, and I remember because I remember what we were talking about. I think it was about, like, drinking or something like that, something that just we shouldn't have been talking about, or, like, we were trying to have a deeper conversation about that, and I remember I kinda said in my mind, I'm like, "It's fine because God will forgive me," and then I looked over and I saw that, and I remember it makes me shake about it. I can't make it up, like, no one can deny it, and Caden literally could say he felt the air shift in the room from when I turned my head and then I looked back at him, and he said he could just feel the air just shift. and he's gotten a lot closer with Christ with me, and then I remember we sat up till 3 AM reading our Bibles that night because I was so just like, "I can't do this," and then I told him, I'm like, "Caden, like, I don't know what to do right now," and he was like, "We need to pray," and I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we need to do," and it's just been little things like that, it's like, I see that face everywhere I go now, and I'm like, "This is my sign that I need to turn from what I'm doing because it's gonna lead me to something that's what I not where I wanna be."
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a very vivid experience. Darian had one that was when she was pregnant with Freya, she had a dream that it wasn't quite like your experience where it was like you were awake and, like, experiencing it. It was more of a dream, but it was so vivid that she could still come down here and tell the story today. Like, it's always back of mind because of that, and so it's scary. I mean, it's the way I think of it is like, is it your subconscious trying to tell you those things and it knows what will install the most fear into you, so that's what it presents with a visual, but then you have a secondary hand like Caden who was also in the room, but also experienced that, so it's like, then you're crossing into, is there just 2 subconsciouses going on at the same time creating visuals? It's like, well, maybe not. So yeah, I mean, how else do you explain it other than than what you actually felt in that moment, that emotion? And so that's it's scary too. I mean, I've had some pretty insane dreams too when it comes to regards to demons and stuff like that, and it's terrifying. I will say there's nothing. I used to be a avid horror movie watcher. I used to watch horror movies all the time, but ever since I think Freya's been born and Darian's had that story, and I like sleep now. So exactly to your point, I don't want to be up till 3 a.m. reading Bibles because I'm so shit scared of whatever's going on in my noggin. So, um, no, that's cool. I like that answer too, because a lot of times when I ask that question, it's more towards like a good thing. But I think there's negative things too that happen in your life that push you towards that way. And that's also important too, because it's not always, glamorous and there's not always this magical angel that comes down and touches you on the shoulders and says, "Come with me, I'll teach you the promised land." So there's some negatives that can happen with it too. So
Mhm.
very interesting. But when you look, I guess, let's say about the origins of humanity, do you like, for instance, I'm guessing you believe in Adam and Eve, and that's kind of how the
Mhm.
human race started. Do you have a timeline that you can kind of put that into, or like how many years, thousands of years ago started Adam and Eve, and then that kind of branched off into the society that we live in today?
I mean, realistically, all I can say is I can't say like, "Oh, it was" I don't even know, BC, is that what they call it? Whatever. I can't say like, "Oh, this many years," or like, "It started in 001," or whatever, but I
Mm.
think that starting back with like the Big Bang Theory, I think the more you dive into science, the more you can't deny that there is a God. And I think, or I don't wanna say a god, the god, or, you know, but I think just looking at that and it's like there was 2 particles that just went like this and created the most balanced atmosphere that could like, maintain human life and have us thrive. I don't think that just 2 like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure 2 particles did collide, but I just can't get through my head that there wasn't a god that said, "Let there be light." Boom, becomes the most perfect planet possible. I mean, you look at, like, how close we are to the sun, we're any closer, we burn up, we're any farther away, we'd freeze to death. I think that's insane, because you can't tell me that all that doesn't mean there's something higher that balanced it. Now for human life, I think that's just I mean, it started with Adam and Eve, yes, and I'd have to get my Bible out to say, like, exact whatever, but if you read, like, through Genesis, it literally talks about how each descendant it's like a tree. It started Adam, Eve, and then there came that firstborn, and then it just went like that. Yes, it's kind of crazy to think how it evolved to 8 what are we at, 8 billion people on the earth, but at the same time, if you think about, I don't know, like, we had 4 kids in our family, and then
Yeah.
it's like mom, dad, they both had their siblings. I mean, it's crazy to think that I'm not saying we're all, like, blood to blood related, like, with your neighbor from across the street, but I'm saying that in a way, I think we all did come from the same thing.
I agree with that. I do think that we're all not related, but we're all humans and we all share the same DNA and the same makeup. And so I think too, it does stem from one specific branch. Now, when that was or how that was, I don't think we'll know. Um, so I liked what you said though about like the Earth's placement and everything like that, and the atoms. So another theory that has been brought to me through doing these podcasts is the idea that maybe the Earth was just like, say it had the Big Bang and then it just existed for a super long time. And maybe there is a God and he was, if you're an almighty power, you obviously can go around the entire universe. You know different things or maybe just the galaxy, whatever it is. And maybe Earth was just like the perfect habitation for his creation. And that maybe through his scanning process and everything like that was like, oh, that is perfect, and I can create that. But then it kind of contradicts with, do you think God creates everything? Do you think that he creates animals, life, plants, all the storms, all those things? Or do you think that God just creates humans and is closely knitted with humans and then just kind of planted the seed for us to be here and then Mother Nature takes care of the rest? I think that's a really interesting thought. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if you again, looking at Genesis, it's like on the day 1, God created the light, he made the earth. And again, I'd have to pull out my Bible because it's not I don't know why the first 7 like, the first 6 days just never they always blend in together with me,
Yeah,
but he made in those first 6 days, he made the heavens and the earth, he made the sea and the land, he put animals on this earth. I think he created all of that, and I
okay,
think that timeline of the 6 days, do I think it was 6 or I'll say 7. 7, like, scientific days of, oh, like, today's Monday through Friday, like, Monday through Sunday. I don't think it was like that. That's, kinda where I defer with some others because 'cause they're like, "Oh, but it was day by day." But if you do the math, I don't think that could have all happened in one day. I especially
yeah.
all the species of the Earth, I think it happened over, I mean, time, but we don't know that timeline because it was never said like, "Oh, this in days means this many years or this many thousand years." That's where I think a lot of people get confused because 'cause they're like, "Oh, well, that couldn't happen in a day." Day could have meant something completely different back then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Because time's an imaginary construct. It's whatever you put on it. You could come up with a new terminology for time, and it could mean 40 years. For instance, we have the millennia and centuries and so on and so forth. And so, it's definitely different lingo. So with that kind of theory, do you still believe in evolution in like the sense that things are constantly evolving and obviously everything starts at as something and kind of evolves over time? Because even looking at like humans for example, we have evolved as humans over time, whether that's where we got taller, smaller, and everything like that, just based off of the environment that was presented to us. So do you think that everything just kind of started as like a blank sheet and then just kind of evolved into its own little thing?
I think evolution is actually very interesting because, I mean, some people will say we came from monkeys, and, like, you can have that view, but and then it's like you look at it, and if you read, like, ancient the Old Testament, for example,
Mm,
people in the Old Testament lived 700 years or so, and it's like, if you look at that and, like, I've seen a diagram before, it's like, there's Abraham, there's whoever, and then it's like they were all, like did all this and they lived 700 years, and then you look to nowadays and we live 80, 90 years. And I think that was I believe someone said it was something to do with, like, the Lord is like, "All right, now we're gonna" or, like, since those were, like, the big ones, they were the original, like, humans, if that makes sense, that, there was more of us, we don't need to live 700 years to make a difference. But yeah, if you read any of the Old Testament, it's like, "Oh, when Abraham was 140 years old." I think that's a great example of evolution is that as we've evolved, we live less lives, but then it was a time where we only lived till we were 30, and now we can live till we're 80, 90 because of modern medicine.
do you think, because we kind of just talked about how you can time can be changed into perspective. Like, for instance, when they say 700 years, maybe that was they were counting a year based off of, like, the different cycles of the sun, and so maybe 700 years to modern day was only, like, 50 years, you know? That's my only thing with it is that, like, when it comes to science, we know that living past 100 is almost impossible. Now, there's also the other environments. Maybe their entire environment was different. They were eating different foods or they had a different makeup because the world looked a lot different then. I don't know, but I think it's hard to say with science, even now that we can go back tens of thousands of years, to say that somebody could live that long would be next to impossible, if you look at it from a scientific matter. So I guess then it kind of jumps to the realm of, do you want to be scientific with it and have to have factual proof, or do you want to have the spiritual view of, well, this is what it says it is, so I'm going to believe that way. I think
Yeah.
that's where it kind of you get the 2 differentiating parties. I don't think we came from monkeys per se, but I do
No,
think
yeah.
that we have evolved from a long stem of some our final form, shall I say, is
Mhm.
that I obviously take the personal stance that it took millions and millions of years to us evolutionize into Homo sapiens, where we were Homo erectus, Homo erogenous, lots of different types of humans in a sense, but just evolved thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years into kind of what we are now. But who's to say where did that all start from? Because even if I have that perspective and it's only a couple million years, I believe that the world's 4 billion years old. So where did we come from? How did we stem from a cell to get all the way to where we are now? I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. So um, it might be more beneficial for me to just say there's a God, he put us here, and then I don't have to answer that question in my own head. But I don't know. That's
Mhm.
the way of the world. That's why we ask these questions, because there's I don't know. We'll never really know. We weren't there at the start of creation, so we can't say with a finger on it and say, "Yes, this is exactly what happened." But,
Yeah.
well, let me ask you this: do you think then humans were created with intention, or do you think that we were put here and then we just kind of evolved by chance?
I will say I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier. I don't know how old
Mhm.
the actual oldest person was in the Old Testament because I was saying now in my head, I'm like 700 might be a little extra, but that I will stick with. But I think 100% that humans were made for a purpose. I don't think that purpose was to, you know, like for nowadays, it's like I don't think I'm meant for a purpose to this is what I need to do in life. But I think God put humans on this earth for a purpose of these are my these are my people. I want them to I he didn't create zombies. He didn't create robots. He created people that wanted to follow him and worship him. And then from day 1, we broke that. We made sin when Eve ate the apple. I think that was and I think that was the biggest thing is that he didn't want robots. He gave us free will. So I think I could sit here and say, "Oh yeah, God made us to be, robots to him," but that's not true. He made us in his image so that we could create a world, and he wanted free will. He wanted us to believe in him. So I don't think I can sit here and say, "Oh, God made us to worship him," because I don't think that is true. I think he made us to follow him and to follow he didn't want a bunch of people on the earth just to do whatever they want. That's true. But I think he wanted to give us a choice. He wanted us to, he wanted to give us the choice to follow him.
I like that, because I like to think that if there is a God, it was more of I like to think of it as like a science experiment, right? If he created us, he put us out there and said, "Hey, let's see what happens," right? It wasn't, "Oh, I'm gonna put you on the earth and then you have to follow this and you have to follow me, otherwise you're gonna die." Because obviously that's not true because we have people who don't believe in Christianity. We don't, or people that do and don't follow it and don't get smited for it right away. So I like to think of it as a science experiment where, yeah, like if I were to believe that way, he created us in his image or how he wanted to planted the seed and now just sits back and watch this shit go down because I think that's the other part of Christianity where people say, well, like he's got like a hand on my shoulder guiding me and like making me make all these decisions. I'm like, I don't think that's true. I think it's more of he is giving you a skill set, or at least, like you said with the Bible, where he can say, hey, here's a book, a guideline. This is something that you can use as point of reference if you're lost, but I'm not gonna, like I said, it's a science experiment. If he was dictating too many factors or moving people around the way he wanted to, then it wouldn't be life. It wouldn't be what we found it out to be today. It'd be a whole different thing. So that's
Now that you
kind of
say
how I
that,
like
actually,
to do it.
something just clicked. You said
Mhm.
science experiment, and I just remembered something that I was learning from, I think it was a lecture, or not a lecture, preaching or whatever. But I know, like, in the heavens, it was, God and Lucifer was his name at the time. The god
Mhm.
of I don't remember, or not the god. God made him. I believe it was for I don't
I think
know.
it's always
Oh,
been the
for worship.
underworld.
Yeah, well, he was actually made for worship. He was one of God's angels. He was a top
Mm.
3 angel, And I think that's crazy to think about is that he went from Lucifer to the devil, not because God was like, I don't like you, you need to go. It's because he told God, humans are going to be a waste of time. They're worthless. They don't understand. And then I think something that someone said, and that really stuck with me, is that when God cast him out of heaven, one of their biggest debates was about humans and what the humans would do. And I think God said, watch this. I'm going to make them, I'm going to give them free will. You can try to affect them as much as you want, but he's gonna say, "Watch how they come back to me." And I think that as Christians, that's one of our biggest flexes that, you have all these temptations and the devil's in your head every day. That's the truth of it, is that no matter how close you want to say I am to Christ, it's that the devil's going to whisper in your ear and try to get you to fall off every time because he wants you to mess up. He wants to prove to God, look at these worthless humans. They're going to mess up every day and you still love them. And God says, yeah, they are my people. I still love them. I'm going to continue to give them free will. They're not robots, but watch how they're going to come back to me and watch how they still believe in me.
That's a good way to look at it. I like that view. Um, 'Cause yeah, and that's always it's the dual shoulders, right? There's always the good and the bad. There's a double-sided coin to everything in life. You could do it the right way, the wrong way, anything in between, and so that's a good view to look at it, is like, "Hey, I'm gonna give them temptation. Let them make their own choices." Like you said, it's that science experiment. Let's see what's gonna happen, and you have 2 influences. I think anybody would be foolish to say that they don't think about the good and the bad or the right and the wrong, right? It's like, for instance, if I wanted a beer tonight, it'd be like, well, the good news is I'm gonna feel great, we're gonna have a good time, but the bad news is like, "Oh, then I'm gonna probably not sleep very well, blah, blah, blah," and, but I'm given the choice, right? At the end of the day, I get to choose what I wanna do, and that's kinda the whole point, is that you get the perspective of both good and evil, and then you get to make the choice. You get to decide, "Yes, I'm gonna do that," or, "Nope, you know what? I'm not going to. I'm gonna just take the night off," whatever the case may be in that scenario, so I think that's
Mhm.
cool. I think that's good. Um, let's turn it towards more of a little bit morbid fact or morbidity, shall we say. What do you think happens after you die?
I mean, after you die, I mean, I've seen all the videos of you go into a white room and then you go to a door, stuff like that. I don't know if I believe in all that. I believe that in life, you're gonna be given choices and as we said, free will. You're gonna have a choice to do this or this. And I think in life, I believe that when you come to a point, you're gonna face the cross, you're gonna face that throne no matter what. No matter what you believe in, I believe as people say, every knee will bow. And I don't mean that to scare people. I mean that to know that there's a loving father that wants to know you. And at the end of the day, he's gonna know you, he's gonna talk to you, but it's how you approached that life towards him. 'Cause everybody knows you're gonna die. No matter what, you're gonna die. And in my eyes, I can't face the fact, or I can't believe that there's a God that didn't wanna know us on earth and there's not a final purpose. I don't believe this isn't a I believe this is a trial run, I should say. Because you can do all these things in life, and in the end, it's not gonna matter. No matter how much money you're gonna have, you're gonna die. No matter what you do, you're gonna die. There's no magical pill that says you're a good person, you're gonna live forever. So why wouldn't this be a trial run? And at the end, I believe we're all gonna face the throne, and God's gonna say, well done, my good and faithful servant, or he's gonna say, turn from me, for I never knew you, because you never tried to know him. And I believe a lot of people really struggle with that, and they say, oh, but Jesus forgave my sins. He forgave it so you could repent and turn away from it. So yeah, at the end of life, I think when we die, I won't say like, oh, there's a white room and then there's two doors and you get kicked to one of them. I think it's you're gonna go up to that throne, you're gonna meet the Father, and you're gonna basically own up to what you did. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. Lord knows I'm not perfect. We know that. But I think every day just trying to be better. And then it's just the little things that kind of just push you to like, oh, you know, I don't know, stuff like that.
Introducing West River Caramel Whiskey. West River Whiskey proudly presents their caramel flavored whiskey, a proud product of South Dakota. A perfect balance of high quality whiskey and smooth caramel, crafted to provide a rich experience with every sip. The whiskey used in their caramel whiskey is double pot distilled and aged for 5 years in American white barrels, creating a deep, refined character before carefully blended with caramel flavors. Rooted in agriculture and crafted with care, this bottle represents the spirit of the Midwest: hard work, patience, and authenticity. Whether enjoying neat, over ice, or mixed into your favorite cocktail, West River Caramel Whiskey delivers smooth, warm with a touch of sweetness that lingers long after the glass is empty. You can get yours now at westriverwhiskeyco.com. Ships to Alaska, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Oregon, South Dakota, and Utah. See, I have the same view, but it's different in the sense of I think you're right. I think when you face death and death comes knocking, you are going to see everything that you did in this life. And let's just say, for instance, for metaphorical purposes, it's a big screen, right? You're gonna get a big screen TV, and it's just gonna project everything that you did in this life. And in my view, it's just gonna be that. That is just like you're gonna get this final view of everything that you did, and either your last fading moments on this planet is gonna be fear and peril because you're like, "Oh my god, I didn't do what I wanted to do, or I wasn't actually a good person my whole life, or I didn't stay connected with my people," whatever the case may be. Or it's gonna be that just euphoric feeling of like, I did it. I made it my whole life. I did everything I set out to be. I was a good person, and then you move on. So I think it in both of our views are very similar. I just don't think it's more of I'm not going to present myself to an almighty power and then I get to go one way or another. I think but I do think at the end of the day when death comes knocking, you do have that split second or whatever it is looking back at your whole life and you get to either die with that overwhelming anxiety of, "Oh my god, this is it. I fucked up," or peace. Ah, I did that. I did what was meant to be. Why I was put on this earth as a human is to experience life, and I did it the right way. Okay, let me move on. So, but to your point, every single person on this planet experiences death. So I think everybody gets to have an opinion on it because someday death's going to come knocking. It doesn't matter how rich or how poor or how medically advanced you are. We're all going to die. It's a fact of life. Even if you're, super religious and you believe in all the gods and everything like that, they all die. Everybody dies. You know what I'm saying? It's a part of life. With life comes death. So I guess you get to kind of take it how you want. Take it in your own view. So,
Can
um,
I ask one thing? I know this isn't my
please.
podcast, but I just wanna ask.
No, no, I was gonna say, if you have any questions at any point, please, I would love to hear them.
Can I ask you, like, what do you think happens, like, after you see that big view of, "Oh, this is what I did in my life," what do you think comes next? Because I know a lot of people say that maybe don't always believe, they say, like, "Oh, darkness." Like, do you think your soul just dies? Do you think, like, it's blank, there's nothing left of you? Or what do you think happens after that big green screen of, "Oh, this is what I did?"
Yes, and when I say the metaphorical screen, I think it's your own thoughts. It's just in my brain, it'll be no different than when you're daydreaming. You just got like that screen that goes on your head, and you're just living in your own head. I think it's just end. I think death comes knocking, and it's just over. And I think yeah, I just it's no different than when you fall asleep and you just drift off into a dream, and a lot of the reasons that I believe that too is that, a lot of people talk about death experiences and they also have done the scientific route where they do the brain waves and the levels. They can censor and see that when your heart stops and your body's no longer alive because your heart stopped, the brain neurons are still firing and they're still going and they're still active, whether that's 30 seconds, I think it's all the way up to 2 minutes. And I think that's your final judgment of your brain saying, acknowledging, okay, we just died. And then giving you the opportunity to look back at everything that you did. And then you get to have that oh shit moment. And so, but no, to your question, I think it just ends. I think that we as humans are just living organisms, no different than any other living organism that's on this planet. And just like we don't, some people might believe in a dog heaven or an elephant heaven or whatever else, but like, to me, we're just organisms. And when my heart stops pounding and I'm dead, then that's it. And then I'm no longer an organism. No different than I don't think an elephant has a soul. I don't think a giraffe has a soul. I just think that they're a living organism and they're experiencing this gift of life like I am. We're extremely blessed to be here because I think there's 1 in 80 trillion chance that we're even here as humans, let alone getting to sit across, the United States and talk to each other. I just think it's a complete and absolute circumstance that we got to be here. And so I think it's just a blessing to be alive. And when it finally comes time to die, I'm just gonna die, and that's it. So, and I know that's not what you wanna hear, but that's it, and I know it's really hard for people with faith to think about things that way. Because, like you said, if you believe in, you having a soul and you believe in life has a purpose, then it's really hard. You can't wrap your brain around the idea that you lived an entire life just to get to the end, and there's nothing that is waiting at the end of the door. Whereas I take the opposite, where I think that we shouldn't even be here. So, why not just enjoy it, and then when it finally comes knocking, I'll accept it for what it is,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess I just differ a little from that, so that's what I say.
That's good. That's why we have the podcast, so you can come on,
Mhm.
express your beliefs and do it openly, you know? And so
Mhm.
but yeah, I've definitely, and that's like I said earlier with the maturing and the solo time, I've spent so much time thinking about things like this. It wasn't just like yesterday I thought, well, maybe it'd be cool just to say that I don't believe in a God. Like it's just been years and tons of conversations and thoughts, and it's just like to me that's what makes the most sense. And like I said, I gotta face death one way or another. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you know what, I face death and I go to the pearly gates or whatever, and God comes and says, "Listen, buddy, you ignored me your whole life and you refuse to acknowledge me, so I have no other choice but to turn you away." That's the decision I gotta live with. No different than you make choices every single day in your life and you come out with the outcomes and you have to accept them. And I think the one of the biggest problems with society right now is that people make daily choices and do daily things, and then they get to the end result and say, "Well, why wasn't I hired for the job?" Or, "Oh, why don't I get the $1,000,000 cash advance bonus?" Well, it's like, because you didn't earn it. You didn't do the steps to take to it. So you can't sit there and complain at the end. So I think obviously it's easy for me to say now when I'm young and healthy, but I do think that when it came to the time, if there was a God and I chose an entire life to be absent of him, then I deserve what comes next. And that's the truth. But
See, I have that same view of, like, if, like, I live a life and then there is a God at the end, then, you know but for me, I think the way I differ from it is that, I'd rather live a whole life dedicated to a God that I believe is real and be right in the end than live a life of what I find is, like, obviously not saying you don't, of course, but, like, for me, it's like I found a place of peace, hope, joy. I'd rather live that whole life and dedicate myself to a purpose that I believe in and then get to it, like, and then get to the end and be like, "I was right, knew it, told y'all," versus, like, living a life where, I lived my happy life and then getting to the end, it's like for me, it's like I just have nothing to lose. I truthfully feel like I have nothing to lose, and a lot of people might not agree with that, and I think a lot of people view the church as, like, a very hard thing, is just like we did, like, it was more of a chore for us, and I think a lot of people get misrepresented at such a young age with one bad experience, and that breaks my heart is because that was never the point. That was never the point of Christ, that was never the point of a living and loving God, that was never the point, and a lot of people I know say, "I don't like to go to church that much, you know, I was this happened at church when I was younger. I didn't like my priest very much told me that what I was doing was wrong and made me feel very like, separated, and I just think that's crazy. That's why I don't agree with a lot of churches. That's why some days it is hard for me to go to church on Sunday because I know that I'm probably gonna disagree because I sit there and I'd rather read my Bible and dedicate my life to that, and I think then people just hear me saying, "Oh, I'm a Christian," and they're like, "Oh, so she's gonna judge me." And that's something I never believed in, and I will never agree with. I'll never agree with Christians that judge people for what they do. Because truth be told, we're not perfect. The only thing is that we believe we are forgiven, and we try to turn ourselves for the better so that we can face a loving God at the end.
yeah. No, I like that. When I had Chen Hao on, I asked him about that, and so in China, obviously it's communism country, so it's obviously very different. However, predominantly they are atheists. So if most of the time in the culture, if you become religious, it's not until later in life. But I was like, I don't think that's a terrible idea. I don't think it's a bad thing that, in America, we are really pressed. Like even it's subtleties. Like in God we trust, and is put printed on all of our dollar bills, and all these different things. And like you said, there's more churches in towns than there are convenience stores, and so on and so forth. And it's just like it's always that subtle pressure of just like, oh, you've got to believe in this, or you got to think my way, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I think it might not be a terrible thing to have a general nothingness, and then as you continue to grow older, because everybody's gonna be curious, eventually people are gonna ask these questions. What happens when I die? Like, who created all this stuff? All these things, you're generally gonna curiosity is gonna take you towards a religion, and then you should be able to be given the opportunity to explore all the routes and then decide which one makes the most sense. Not to like what you said, where you're just, oh, you're 6 years old? Well, now you're gonna go start going towards confirmation. Oh, you're middle school? Now you're gonna be confirmed, and you're gonna be told all these things about God and all these things. It's like, it's just shoved on top of you. So then, yeah, it either takes you one way where you have to step away from it for a while, and then you get to come back in your own path, or like me, where it was just too much, and then I went and then found something else, and now I just completely say, oh, Christianity to the side. So I don't know. I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, is that maybe it would be more beneficial to us as a country, or as a society, to not introduce that so young, to not put those pressures on young people, and then rather let them get the opportunity to explore for themselves, and then have the resources to be like, oh, this is what you want to do, this is what you want to learn about, well, come on over, we'll talk about it. So just something that I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
um
100% I agree. Same thing. I mean, I don't think anything should be forced. I don't think it ever should have been. I don't think they should ever say, you have to believe in God, you have to believe in this, you can't believe in God, you can't believe in this. I think it honestly, at the end of the day, it's a choice. And I can't sit here and say I'm gonna make my kids go to church every Sunday with me. I think I'm gonna ask them, do you want to go? Because if you make that bad like almost like intake, or if like you force someone to go into a Catholic, like I know one of my best friends says she was forced to go to Catholic church growing up. Now she doesn't believe in God because she was so just forced into it. I'm never gonna force anyone to go to church with me. I'll never force someone to hear what I have to say. All I can say is this: I want to share this with you. If you want to sit down, like just like me and you, I don't we don't believe the same thing, but we'll still sit down and talk about it. And I believe that makes enough difference over saying you need to sit down, you need to listen to me, and condemning you for things that I do the same things.
Right, I completely agree. I always use that exact analogy towards books, where no offense, mom, if you're listening, but she, as a punishment, would always be like, "Well, you're gonna go to your room and read for 30 minutes," and I was like, "Fuck!" Like, I hated reading so much as a kid, because it was a punishment, but it was like, and as a kid, when you're getting forced to go to these places, well, I don't want to go to church today. Well, too bad you're going, right? It feels like a punishment, and so now I'm almost 30, and now I'm finally getting back into books. Like, I just finished one of my books that was 500 pages long, and I'm currently reading the book that you actually got me, and I'm 70 pages into it, and I'm loving it. I'm finally loving reading again, but it was just for so long because it was viewed as like a punishment. It wasn't. It was my mom was just trying to make me like get into reading, so she's like, "You're going to go read now." But when you're forced to do things, then sometimes you can take the negative side of it. So, um, I can definitely see that in a lot of things with Christianity in general. But, well, let me ask you this. When you're counting down your final moments, and whether you believe in the pearly gates, whatever it is, what are some things that you want checked off? Some things that you want to accomplish in this life, whether that's physical, mentally, emotionally, anything like that. What are some big things that kind of stick out to you?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just like, one, live a life I'm proud of. Love people the way they should be loved. I don't like mistreating people. I don't like talking crap about people. I've never liked that. Well, as of recent. But another thing is just I wanna travel, I wanna see the world, and I say that now and I'm like, "Oh, I'm broke, I can't go anywhere." But, like, when I get money, I'd rather spend money on, like, a nice trip, going to, like, see places, like, seeing, like, all the wonders of the world. I'd rather spend money doing that than spend a few extra dollars a month on, like, a very nice house. Like, no, like, that's a luxury that can come later in life when I'm 40 and I have all this money. But I think when you're young, you're able. I think you should go do things. I think you should be able to do what you want at such a young age when you're willing, able, capable. So, I'd rather do that and then I'd rather just live a life I'm proud of. Another thing, like, every day just try to be better. I'd wanna get closer with my family, like, as you said, we've gotten closer the past couple of years, but, I mean, it was hard for a while. I mean, we were at different points in our life. I was in high school and all that, but I think another thing is I just wanna get closer with you guys. I wanna get cl I've been rebuilding the relationship we have with our parents because I was such a brat in high school. I think just kinda that sort of thing is just, like, just rebuilding and then, like, just seeing everything.
Yeah. I think those are good goals, and I share their ambitions with the family thing, and, I've said it a lot where I was in Oregon, and, I still remember where Darian was like, "When was the last time you talked to your mom?" And I was like, 6, 7 months ago, and it was like, "Why am I going 6 or 7 months without talking to my mother?" Like, she gave me 18 years and everything I could possibly imagine, and I'm just gonna return that by not talking to her, because why? Like, and there wasn't a specific reason, it was just I was so caught up in my own shit, and then, very similar, I talked about it with Chin Hao, where you came up to me one day and we were just like, "Hey, why the fuck don't you talk to me?" And I'm just like, "I promise you, I love you, I just it was caught up in my own things," and so I completely agree, and I think that was a big reason to move back to the Midwest, and, like, obviously, you came down in November, and just having the ability to people say, "Hey, yeah, I can actually get in my car and I can go see Dylan." Or I can get in my car and I can come see you guys. Like, "I'm gonna come see you guys in a week." Like, that's a huge thing for us now rather than, beforehand where it was like you just couldn't. I mean, just wasn't a lot of opportunities, so, um well, I guess for you too, do you wanna have a family of your own?
I mean, I've kinda always had the thought of, like, I'll say it, I don't really, like, love kids. I don't. I like hanging out with them, and I love hanging out with, like, Freya, for example, for the day, but when night comes, that thing needs to, like, "You can have a bed." Like, that sort of
Yep.
thing.
I
So I
don't
kinda
blame
have
you.
the thought of, I mean, if it happens, it happens, if it doesn't, it doesn't.
It's a good mindset to have. I can tell you going to bed last night at like 11:30 because Sylvain needed to eat. We woke up probably 6 times in the middle of the night, and then I was up for the day at 6 AM, and there probably wasn't more than a couple hours of sleep in there, and he does suck, I won't lie to you there, but I choose to, like I said before, the glass half full, and I'm like, I'll never get these experiences again. When my kids are grown up, like, even with Freya, Freya doesn't wake up in the middle of the night anymore, you know? So rather than be like, "Oh my god, I have to take care of this fucking kid, and it just wants to eat all the time and shit," or like, yeah, when she shits at 2:30 in the morning, that's always a fun one too. I can't even see, and my glasses are lost, and I'm just, like, wiping ass. I'm like, "Oh my god." But I choose it's memories, and I'll never get those experiences again, so now I'll be able to look back and laugh about it and just be like, "Yes, I did that." So no, I think you take a great mindset because me and Darian had a very similar mindset where we weren't sure if we wanted to have kids, and we said, "You know what? Why don't we just let life take its course?" When we lived our fullest life, and then sure enough, lo and behold, right after we got married, we had Freya, and so I think life will definitely tell you what you can and can't handle, and let it take its own course. If you're meant to have kids, great. If you're not meant to have kids, that's okay too. We have a lot of brilliant women and lovely women in our lives that never had kids, and I don't think anyone should be judged off of whether you raise a family or not because you already have a family. We have a big, beautiful family, and we get to spend time with each other, and we can, like you said, continue to grow those relationships. So, but I think I can't lie. I think being a dad is the coolest thing I've ever got to experience, and it's been very, very humbling and very different. So I always would say to people, if given the opportunity, I think it's an amazing experience. But I've also been in the exact same boat where I was like, I don't know, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. I'm gonna let life take its course. So. Well, let's turn I've only got 2 more questions for you, and then if you have any other questions for me, like I said, I've gotta do better with that because 'cause I've had the same response as you said, where like, "Can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Yeah, I would love to," but I do run it more of like a me asking you kinda questions thing, so, uh, but let's talk about society for a second. So when you're looking at, like, the kind of holistic view of society, what do you think modern society takes most for granted right now with our human existence, would you say? Or what is our greatest blind spot that we're currently experiencing as humans?
I think the biggest blind spot, and, like, this is controversial, I've never been super political or anything like that, and I stand on that. I think it's whatever. But I think the biggest thing we take for granted is just, like, seeing like I said, seeing the world, and then it's like, we were put on this earth to bond and to share and to, like, travel the world and, like, be close with other people from different, cultures and things like that. And instead, what we do is we put up quite frankly, we put up barriers. We
Yep.
put up these big separations. We say, no, we go to war and we say, no, you can't be friends with them. You can't be friends with them. You can't go to this country and you can't see it because, quite frankly, they don't want you in there. And it's like, even, like, I don't know, going to different countries, it's like you could just tell there was a barrier, and I hate that. I hate that we haven't been able to share with each other. I hate that, we can't in the Bible, it literally says, like, "Welcome thy neighbor, welcome the people around you." And it's like, "Welcome the foreign, for they need refuge." And that's another thing is that it's just really hard for me to accept that a lot of people, there's like, "You're not from here, you can't be here," when I think this world was meant to be shared.
Yeah. It's tough, and, you bring up a good point, and we can't see the world right now, even if you wanted to. I mean, it's almost next to impossible to go in certain places, and just the hatred over the most silly things, It's just like, I think I in history, obviously, I have my history cap on all the time, and, there has been wars over land and resources, and when it comes down to, like, yes, you need to eat, yes, you need to drink water, but, like, why can't you share that? Or why can't you use it as a collective to work together to get more of those rather than, "Oh, well, you have food, I need food, I'm gonna kill you. So just sit back and watch that." Where now, like, should not be political, but there's just, like, it's the stupidest things, things that are not necessary to life, you know what I'm saying? They're not necessary to life. If we were over fighting because there was only one water basin left on the planet and that was it, and we were fighting to get it back for our family, maybe that'd make more sense, but, like, it's just the most minuscule, minute things that we just decide we're gonna kill each other over, which it
Mhm,
sucks, and it's not fun to be a part of, but I think you're right. I think that we are also so blessed to have the opportunity we did when we were kids to travel, so we know what's out there. Um, for instance, with Darian had never even seen an ocean until I took her to San Diego when we were in college, and she had never been outside of Minnesota and Iowa and Sioux Falls. So that was it. Like, she had never gone anywhere her whole life. And so I think you're right, having the privilege to travel and having the open borders. Like, even when you go to Europe, you have to passport in and out and get in between different countries, and some countries have the ability to just go back and forth. But we take it for granted in the United States. If I wanted to right now, I could go to any state in the country. I can get my car, drive. There's no repercussions. I don't gotta tell nobody. I don't gotta do nothing. Like, and we take that so much for granted. We just think, oh yeah, well, I'll just go to Missouri tomorrow, or I'll just go to Kansas tomorrow. It's like, but for some other people, like, even though it's literally 10 minutes down the road, they would die if that happened. Let's use North Korea, South Korea for an example. They have the divisional line, and you can't even go near it, otherwise you get shot and killed. Like, that's crazy to us? And so it's definitely something we take for granted, and especially as Americans, as privileged arseholes as we are. What can we say? What can we say? We're all part of it. So
mhm.
that's some good answers. Well, I've got a bonus question for you, and
'Kay.
I ask everybody this, so if you've heard it,
Mhm.
this is why. How do you think the pyramids were built, and who do you think built them?
Oh, I heard you ask this in the last one,
Mm.
I think it
Mhm.
was. I mean, truth be told, who knows? I'm not gonna sit here and be like, God himself put it on the earth, because I don't know that. I don't think anybody's ever gonna know that. And
Yeah.
I think it's one of the great mysteries of the world. I know very, very long time, Egypt was it's in the Bible, like, stuff like that. It
Mhm.
was that had all these slaves. It kept the Israelites slave for 300 years. You never know what could have happened during that time. You never know how many people died to make those pyramids or if how they did it, how long it took.
Mm.
I mean, I'd love to know your take on it because quite frankly, I've never looked into it. You're very you like that stuff.
Yeah. Is the book of Exodus the one where it talks about the slavery in Egypt?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Well, so I take a very different view than mainstream archaeology, Egyptology, any of those things. I
Mhm.
personally take the stance that I believe the pyramids were built by a civilization, an ancient civilization that was before what modern times give a timeline on. So I think there was a period called the Younger Dryas time period. So basically the last ice age. Last ice age happened 12,800 years ago and lasted until 11,600 years ago. I think before that cataclysm, there was a civilization like us, advanced humans. And clearly, since we have not been able to figure out how to remake those in Egypt, in the Middle East, South America, all these places that we just have no idea how these structures are there, but they're there. Like we can't deny it. I think that there was a civilization beforehand that was advanced and they used a different because obviously we had the Industrial Revolution and that's what led us to vehicles and technology and all those things. I think they had a different advance where they got to the point where they had civilizations, they were able to sit down and start becoming more advanced as humans and found different technology. So they were able to adapt this technology that could move these crazy stones and create these beautiful structures. And then a cataclysm basically wiped them out. And so there's still evidence of what they built, but there's not any evidence of a written tabloids, written languages, anything like that. And there is some examples where they have artifacts of ancient Egypt, and they talk about how the I think it's the Scroll of the Kings. I could be mistaken that title wrong, but basically, it has a list in a cartouche of every single pharaoh's name going back 31,000 years, right? And so there's physical proof that like, yes, this is what they say. Now, could have someone just made that? Yes. But I like to take the stance that we can't describe it with modern technology. I don't think little green people came and did it, and I don't think it was just put there, right? So I do think that humans had to have done it, but obviously we didn't do it in this historically correct time frame 5,500 years ago when humans started building cities. I think it had to have been before that, and I think it leads to the Younger Dryas theory in the sense of that I think a cataclysm basically wiped out the pre-civilization. Obviously we're still here, so it didn't wipe out the world. It just wiped out enough people that we basically had to start from scratch. And that's what I kind of believe too, because I just don't think that they say the first civilizations are like 5,500 to 6,000 years ago. That's when we started to make cities, turn to agriculture, so on and so forth. I just refuse to believe that we were just throwing stones around and hunting game for tens of thousands of years, and then just one day, boop, now I can have 3 million people live in a small area. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. So I think it was a lot of tens of thousands of years. We finally got advanced. Cataclysm happened, and now we're in the modern area. So how they built it, we'll never know because I think it's a lost technology. Who built it? I think it was them. And when did it happen? I think it was maybe 15, even 20,000 years ago. And I think that's for a lot of the things. So there's my take on it. But I always like to ask people because it's one of those things. It's right there. You can go see it, but nobody knows for sure. And so in my opinion, you get an opinion on it because if no one can explain it, doesn't matter if you're an Egyptologist and you've studied it for 50 years, they can't say it for certain. They have a good idea, they have good educated guesses because they study it so much, but no one said, "Oh, I was there when it was built and I know exactly who built them." So that's just kind of my take on it. But anyhoozle. Well, Lou, do you have any questions for me? Anything that you've thought of?
Honestly, no. I'm trying to think if I have any.
No, that's good.
'Cause I asked my big question of what do you think happens after,
Yeah.
but
I think that's a good input. I'm gonna for future podcasts. I think and typically I do send a list of questions beforehand, so I apologize. Normally I send it out just so you can get ideas, so it doesn't just like face value and you're like, oh fuck, I don't know. It gives you a little bit more to talk about. But then in the future, I think I would like to add that too, where it's like, hey, come up with a couple questions you have of yourself that you want to ask me, and we can talk about it as well. That way, it gives you a little bit of more back and forth. Obviously, I put my opinion into a lot of things, but I don't get asked questions all the time. So, well, Lou, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time today. I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to get up and obviously in the public view, share your beliefs and talk to your older brother, but I really appreciate everything and taking the time.
of course. I think it's a great